Hello and welcome to Heidegger 802. We have a new article by the same author as the previous series on the Bible. It's Macumber, and the name of the article is Muted and Hidden Monsters in Revelation 12. I'll begin by reading the abstract. The woman clothed with the sun makes a brief appearance in Revelation 12. However, her influence upon the imaginations of artists and interpreters is substantive. She's unnamed, and yet multiple identities are ascribed to her, including individual women, Eve, Mary, corporate institutions, Israel, the church, and ancient goddesses. In this article, rather than attempting to classify her with a definite identity, my goal is to destabilize this figure by aligning her with the monstrous, using the lens of monster theory. I examine her otherworldly orientation, her hybrid and extraordinary body, her correspondence with other monstrous characters, her unknowability and refusal to fit interpretive categories are part of her monstrosity as she moves across hybrid boundaries and liminal spheres. The alignment of the woman with the monstrous is likely an incongruous image, as discussions of monsters generally focus on the grotesque. However, in recent years, scholarly use of monster theory has pushed against traditional binary readings of biblical cosmic figures. A monstrous encounter can involve both horror, and awe, especially in the realm of religious experience. As Timothy K. Vale states, the monster is both demonized and deified, revealing a deep sense of ambivalence about the relation between the monstrous and the divine, intensifying the sense of paradox. Nowhere is this blurring of boundaries more apparent than God's pride in the monstrous Leviathan of Job, who is both terrifying and beautiful. The tendency to classify the monstrous as overwhelmingly ugly, disgustingly hybrid, abnormally large and evil, only reveals a select number of monsters. Readers predisposed to view the divine messengers or the living creatures of Revelation 4:5 as benevolent routinely overlook the monstrous characteristics, that is, hybridity, abnormally large size, liminal identities, and dangerous abilities. In the case of the living creatures, these hybrid beings exhibit composite bodies with fantastic wings adorned with eyes all around, simultaneously inducing awe and horror. Beyond their composite bodies, the living creatures are also dangerous guardians who control access to the divine throne and acts as conduits of judgment. In his work on Revelation, Craig Koester maintains strict boundaries between agents of the Creator with those of the Destroyer. The hybridity of the locusts represents for him a repulsive confusion of elements. Whereas the composite appearance of the living creatures showcases the harmony of the created order. This artificial and restrictive division of the monstrous from the divine highlights the otherness of only a few creatures, while leaving many divine beings languishing in the shadows of the text. The woman clothed with the sun is one such creature, as she appears only briefly in Revelation 12 before fading out of sight. Without a name and little autonomy ascribed to her, she has become a receptacle of interpretive traditions that obscure her own uncanny attributes and alliances. In a journal issue focused on the lack of names for female characters, it is ironic that this woman has a surplus of monikers bestowed upon her by interpreters. Historically, scholars have sought to uncover the identity of this woman by either seeking human actors, corporate institutions, or mythological forebears. In response to this impulse to rename, reframe, and categorize the woman, Catherine Keller succinctly asks, but why rush to allegorize, to doctrinalize, to make her an it? Indeed, the immense variety of traditions associated with the woman clothed with the sun testifies to her multifaceted character that refuses easy classification. Interpreters have found similarities between the narrative of the woman clothed with the sun and other stories of women like Eve, Hagar, and marry. Early 6th century interpreter Oecumenius saw the woman clothed with the sun as the Messiah's mother, but also stressed her otherworldly nature, described her as fully exalted, wholly worthy of heaven, even though she possesses our own human nature and substance. Oecumenius drew further links between the woman clothed with the sun and Mary by reading the dragon's attempt to swallow the woman's child with that of Herod's attack on the innocents in Matthew. In contrast to Marian interpretations, Methodius objected to such literal readings, arguing that John's apocalypse was rather concerned with the present and the future. These early interpreters read the various symbols associated with the woman as allegorical clues to her connection with the church. Jewish sources are also contenders for the inspiration behind the woman clothed with the sun, specifically the experience of Israel finding refuge and provision in the wilderness. Or as the personified Israel. Finally, recent scholarly work has focused on locating her identity in surrounding cultures with comparable stories of goddess, mothers, fleeing monsters, and finding sanctuary. Whether the figure of the woman clothed with the sun is read as a literal woman, a corporate entity, or a mythological goddess Each of these readings cannot completely account for all of her complexities. Indeed, it is difficult to know how to refer to this woman of Revelation 12 without continuing to add to the confusion. Is the woman clothed with the sun intended as a name, or is it simply a descriptive? Does using this title perpetuate a long-standing tradition of ignoring her anonymity? For the sake of clarity, I will alternate between referring to her as the woman clothed with the sun, and even simply as the woman. Neither is satisfactory, but my purpose is to leave behind these complex layers of interpretive traditions to examine her presentation and actions as a fantastical creature in John's Apocalypse. Adele Reinhardt begins her book on women and anonymity with a memorable analogy. She states, reading the Bible for its unnamed participants is akin to examining the negatives of beloved family photographs. There's a necessary reframing of one's lenses, compelling an adjustment of perspective to look beyond the well-known characters and see those that have always been there, yet unnoticed. Moreover, Reinhardt argues that the lack of a name is not a marker against individuality or even memorability. Rather, these unnamed characters can be just as distinct and vibrant. Using this analogy, I reread The Woman Clothed with the Sun, not to argue for a specific identity, but to examine her function and actions in the text as an uncanny being. Rather than seeking to align the woman with a familiar or even named individuals, my examination of this figure hinges on her very ability to cross boundaries and refuse categories. Although the woman's affiliation with the cosmic world is apparent, she is not typically identified as a monster herself. Using monster theory, I explore the ways that the woman participates in the monstrous by way of her body, but also her associations with other fantastic entities. In this essay, I will focus on the following. 1. Her otherworldly orientation. 2. Her hybrid physical body. And 3. Her uncanny associations with monstrous creatures. My aim is to unsettle the text and shake the woman free from her traditional and historic moorings as both a human woman and allegorical concept. Finding the monstrous. Arriving at a common definition for a monster is challenging, as modern presuppositions understand them as evil, dangerous, and frightening. In some cases, these descriptors are true and aptly described. These descriptors are true and aptly describe beings like vampire, the werewolf, the minotaur, who prey on humans. However, such a narrow definition of the monster excludes a large portion of fantastical creatures that are traditionally understood as more benevolent toward humanity. Helpful examples from Greek myths include Chiron and Pegasus, both hybrid creatures that are viewed as benign and regularly aid humans. although fear is frequently a prime indicator of one's experience of the monstrous, there is also the ambivalent experience of awe in the face of the sublime and unknown. Rudolf Otto's work on the Mysterium Tremendum is cited in Monster Studies for its nuanced understanding of the role of fear and dread when encountering the divine. Building on Otto's work, Beale argues that the divine speeches from the whirlwind reveal a God who is wholly other and aligned with chaos. It is not only the God of Israel that falls into the category of the uncanny, but also the large retinue of divine beings that comprise the heavenly world. Monsters, by their very definition, do not fit neatly into boxes. They are boundary crosses, both in their physical bodies and their abilities to move between realms not accessible to humans. The Latin term monstrum derives from both monere, to warn, and monstrare, to demonstrate, signaling an understanding of monsters as signs or warnings. Their extraordinary appearances, often hybrid, and superhuman abilities mark them as different, showing their boundaries of what it means to be human. When applied to biblical texts, the term monster is typically reserved only for creatures identified as the opponents of God, even though the divine throne room employs some of the deadliest characters. Whether one is terrified or attracted to the monstrous, at the very core, monsters are, in Beale's words, paradoxical personifications of otherness with sameness. Although the woman clothed with the sun does not provoke feelings of dread. Like other more benign monsters, she participates in a larger topography of fantastic creatures that inspire not only fear but awe. Upon closer study, the monstrous nature of the woman clothed with the sun both attracts and unsettles as she resists easy categorization both in her hybrid appearance and her liminal abilities to cross divine and earthly boundaries. Otherworldly orientation. Revelation 12 begins by directing the reader's attention to the skies where two signs or portents appear. The term semeion, sign or portent, is used to denote warnings, often astrological in nature, or to speak of the constellations themselves. The first sign is a woman bearing celestial attributes, including a crown of stars, clothed with the sun, while standing on the moon. Shortly after, a second sign appears, that of the many-headed red dragon, sporting a crown upon its horned heads. These two portents are directly juxtaposed against each other. One, they are both crowned. Two, both appear in the heavens. And three, are set in opposition to each other. Despite possible echoes of other biblical women like Eve or Mary, numerous details point to the woman's more than human orientation. Adele Yarbrough Collins argues that she is portrayed as a queen of heaven and a high goddess reminiscent, especially of Artemis and Isis. However, her association with the totality of solar, lunar, and astral components far outdoes known representations of these goddesses. Her otherworldliness is further emphasized by the term ofte, appeared, used in conjunction with Theophanius, Angelophanius, and prophetic visions, signaling for the audience her cosmic importance. This woman is part of a larger cast of exceptional characters found throughout the divine geographies of revelation, and like them, she can cross the boundary between heaven and earth. Though her role as a mother might foster a sense of familiarity, her association with celestial elements and ability to cross liminal boundaries ensures that she remains overwhelmingly other and extraordinary. This phenomenon is common in monster studies where fantastic creatures are said to be unheimlich, simultaneously familiar and yet oddly strange, causing a deep sense of unease. Yes, it's going to be a summary. Already planned, Kalle, but thank you. It ended enormously interesting. First, for the first time, we have an academic reference. Unheimlich. These creatures are unheimlich. They are not homely. This Heideggerian term is very apt here. You do not feel at home with this hybrid. It is something odd about it. And you can take that to mean that they look on the outside, as unheimlich is used, to the naked eye, absolutely normal, in disguise, maybe under a coat of the clergy, the monasteries, and I would say especially the scribes, especially the scribes. As we saw on page 92, there is a summoning at the very end of the second paragraph. I would just read the columns in a numerical ordinal order. This is the woman, and I would say the unheimliche Frau, the unhomely woman, or unheimlich woman. One at the bottom of the second paragraph, please, Kalle. One, her otherworldly orientation. Think of transcendental, think of original, looking for the not in this world, not in the spiritual, but looking somewhere else. I think that is incredibly apt. There is, in the monstrosity of the unheimlich, you will not feel at home in the transcendental Platonic world. Just suggestions here. Second, her hybrid physical body. The hybrid physical body is here, of course, not the Newtonian material body. It is the psyche, not the spiritual body, which is being tainted. And that unheimliche tainture, I would say, goes well with hybrid. The third, her uncanny associations with monstrous creatures. There is a deep connectivity here to the, if you like it, left brain hemisphere in the surroundings with other hybrid tendencies, with other Vorhanden tendencies. She dwells in the darkness, as we saw in Heather's last article, in the deep seas underneath the land. Here is where she is, hanging together, associating, getting her power with other unheimliche tendencies, and everything is nicely entangled. It is all connected. I think the etymology on page 93, if we could go there, please, Kalle. It's from the bottom, the 8th line or 7th. The Latin term monstrum derives both from monere, to warn, and monstrare, to demonstrate, signaling an understanding, and listen now, of monsters as signs or warnings. She is a warning, this unheimliche character and her associates are together both a showing. Monstrare is the same as monstrate or demonstrate. showing itself, lay up in the open, revealing itself. Its idea is also that everything is in the open. Here we have the monstrous capacity of enlightenment. Everything is demonstrated. Everything is unheimlich and forehanded. I don't think it's a chance. I don't believe in that the academic word. How did it slip into the mouth of Heather Macumber? The reason we find here, it's a hint. It's a synchronicity to show these tendencies are deeply connected. And it also shows the ones who are to lay out in open, and I will in this include to relate your knowledge to somewhere else. That is transcendental. That's defying the observer. When you don't speak by yourself, but you are referring to something otherworldly, something transcendental. You can call it intention extension, sign signified. When you're using other people to let your voice be known. When authors are arriving in the text, when you should speak, you the observer, that is unheimlich. You do not really feel at home with the person who's referring to others. He or she, or it, speak about monsters, is not present. It's not in the world. It's not of this world. It's, if you like, evil or otherworldly. And that's the meaning of unheimlich. Heidegger especially meant those peoples in his own surroundings, either at Heidelberg or Magdeburg, that constantly refer to others as unheimlich. When the observer is not there, when it's not your knowledge anymore, when you have eradicated yourself and thereby wanting others to be eradicated themselves, that's the monstrous act. Kalle, please join.
Thank you. Let's go to page 4 in the PDF, page 92 in the printout. This last phrase. My aim is to unsettle the text and shake the woman free from her traditional and historic moorings as both a human woman and allegorical concept. I find this phrase a little bit naive, but also somewhat charming. I don't know if it's possible to, so to say, free from the tradition. Think about Gadamer and his fusion of horizons. Yes, you always will. And then on the other hand, we have also Wittgenstein and his famous Peter in the box. So here he's actually the Macumber putting the woman in a box without tradition. But on the other hand, you have to also try to do this sometimes to gain new insights. That's only my observation here. So another thing, the last thing I want to comment is here on the unheimlich. I will also, where have we the word unheimlich was here? Last on the page 6 in the PDF, unheimlich, so it was page 94. So unheimlich, it was first used by Freud in a 1919 essay, Unheimlich's Canny in English. And for Freud, it was something threatening. And then Heidegger also used it for Heidegger. It was also a kind of threat. That is, it is a warning. You need this threat, according to Heidegger, to remind yourself to live authentically. To live authentically, you need a threat, at least in a certain degree, and therefore also to repeat the etymology. You need this monere, want, warn, also to demonstrate. You need this aspect of, let's say, the woman is Mary, the Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus. Yes, she can, so to say, become a monster, a benign monster, in order to remind us, warn us. In this sense,
Indeed, yes.
Absolutely. So
I think the Heidegger interpreter Capobianco, he said that when he understood Heimlich, it was a call for him to return to himself. He sort of had left himself, eradicated himself, and take everything from his personality rather than by association or reference to others.
Absolutely, absolutely. Perhaps, I don't know, you can have something concluding words, Hans?
Well, I think it was very interesting, and it was odd that the word unheimlich turned up here. It was way beyond what I would expect. But it's a good reminder when we are too into referring to others, not having our own knowledge. It's a way of life. I think McGilchrist calls that an attitude. It's often called a posture. And it's a way of not being yourself, not taking your own understanding first, not being thrown into the world, being outside the world. When you write something, it needs to come from you, not somebody else. It's not convincing, and it's the other thing, it's also a bit scary. It's truly monstrous not to exist. It's almost like Daniel Dennett. It cannot be a good position to eradicate your personality and your ego. That was actually best pronounced by Jacques Monod, with him to have the monstrous really in the hidden.
Yes, indeed, this mentioning Jacques Monod, that's actually, there is a trace of Jacques Monod in this last phase.
Is it?
Indirectly, at least the same idea that you have to, Jacques Monod said that you have to, so to say, eliminate yourself. If I understand you correctly, Hans.
Yes, yes.
In order to gain objectivity, you have to, so to say, eliminate yourself, make yourself invisible.
Yes. The monstrous thing. There is nothing else to monstrosity, but it's not something weak. I think Heidegger saw that as the greatest threat, but you need to be awakened to that threat. But listen to this. Nobody can put it better than dear old, good old Jacques Monod. This is a quote: "The scientific attitude implies the postulate of objectivity. That is to say, the fundamental postulate that there is no plan, that there is no intention in the universe." And try this one too. In science, self-satisfaction is death. Personal self-satisfaction is the death of the scientist. Collective self-satisfaction is the death of research. It is restlessness, anxiety, dissatisfaction, agony of the mind that nourish science. That's monstrosity, if you mind.
No, so we have two tendencies in scholarship. One is to say eliminate the illusion that you can eliminate the text from a tradition.
Yes.
And the second is to eliminate yourself, the scientist, from the subject itself.
Yeah, yeah. And as I would say, what Jacques Monod's appella, his motto, was directed not actually to the scientific circle, but to academia. In academia, there is so many references in academic literature. It would never been accepted in the 19th century. You were not allowed. It was seen as uneducated to refer to others. You can do it occasionally, but now they all do it 100%. And that, I think that's a good pointer to what it is like trying to eradicate the observer, or like yourself, you shouldn't exist. But of course, very few people has put it so clearly as Jacques Monod. Very few people.
Or Dennett, Daniel Dennett.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, Kalle, I lost the last.
Oh, Daniel Dennett.
Yeah, Daniel Dennett. Yeah, I would say in not so many words. Yeah, Daniel Dennett and Jacques Monod, definitely. Those are the monstrous examples today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Why? Thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening in. Have a very good day, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are. And bye-bye for now.